Welcome to Module 3. In this lesson, we're going to talk about recognizing alcohol misuse. Alcohol is the most commonly misused substance in the workplace, and it's legal, which makes it particularly tricky because drinking is socially acceptable. A lot of employees underestimate how long the effects last. So a worker may think that they are absolutely fine after a few drinks the night before, but the reality is that the alcohol is still going to impair their coordination, it's going to impair their decision making and their reaction time the next morning. And so for safety sensitive positions like commercial driving or heavy equipment operation, even mild impairment is going to have catastrophic results. And that's why the DOT dedicates a full hour of this training specifically to alcohol misuse. It is one of the most preventable cause of accidents. So as a supervisor, you are not being asked to moralize about alcohol. You're being asked to recognize when alcohol is interfering with an employee's ability to perform their job safely. And that means noticing the changes in appearance, noticing any behavior changes or any performance changes that don't really line up with their normal functioning. And once you know what to look for, the patterns become much easier to spot. Alcohol misuse isn't just a personal issue, it's a workplace issue. And according to some national data out there, alcohol related problems cost US employers billions every year in lost productivity, accidents, absenteeism, healthcare costs, and the list can go on. When one person is impaired, the entire organization is going to feel those ripple effects. Productivity is going to take a hit because employees may work more slowly, or they're going to make more mistakes, or they're going to require other people to cover for them. And that's going to strain the coworkers and it's going to reduce the efficiency. We also see morale drop, especially if team members feel safe or unsafe when they're working alongside someone who isn't fit for duty. In industries with safety sensitive roles, the risks are going to multiply. Impairment doesn't just affect the individual, it puts the coworkers and the customers and just the general public at risk. So, for example, a single impaired driver can cause damage that affects dozens of people. So when you look at the bigger picture, it's clear that addressing alcohol misuse isn't just about compliance with DOT regulations. It's about creating a workplace where people can perform at their best and really feel safe doing that. So alcohol is classified as a depressant. That doesn't mean, oh, I'm sad. Depressed means to slow down, and it's slowing down the central nervous system. So our reaction times, things like that. That slowdown has a direct effect on how quickly somebody's going to be able to respond, how well they're thinking through problems, how effectively can they move their body. So, for example, here, alcohol is going to reduce reaction time, and it's going to make it more difficult to respond quickly if there's a hazard on the road. It's also going to impair coordination, which is really critical for anybody who's operating machinery or anyone who's driving a vehicle or even walking safely in a busy workplace. Judgment and decision making are also impacted. So a person may take risks that they normally wouldn't take or fail to recognize when they're making an unsafe choice. So in short, alcohol takes away those very skills that employees need the most to perform their jobs safely. Alcohol misuse is going to show up in two ways: short-term and long-term effects. So the short-term effects are the ones that you may notice right away: hangovers, fatigue, irritability, or maybe it's just an employee who just can't focus. These can appear after a heavy night of drinking or even if the person isn't actively intoxicated. The long-term effects that develop over time, especially when the alcohol use becomes a regular pattern. So Chronic alcohol misuse is going to lead to dependence. Um, it leads to health problems like liver disease or liver failure, and really just an overall decline in work performance. So employees may start missing more days of work or showing up late or making frequent mistakes. And whether it's short term or long term, the impact is the same. The employee is not performing at the level that is required for safety sensitive duties. And your role is to recognize when those patterns become a problem. One of the clearest indicators of alcohol misuse are the physical signs. These are the things that you can see, the things that you can hear, the things you can smell directly. The odor of alcohol is often the most obvious, especially if it's on someone's breath or their clothing. This is a strong objective sign that can't be easily explained away. Red or glassy eyes, those are another sign. They should be considered alongside other symptoms like um, fatigue or allergies can also cause red or glassy eyes. But still, when combined with the other red flags, they're important evidence for us. Slurred or slowed speech is really harder to miss. So if an employee is struggling to form their words, or they're talking unusually slowly, or they're mixing up their words, it's going to raise immediate concerns for you. And as a supervisor, noticing and documenting these physical signs is one of your strongest tools for making reasonable suspicion determinations. Alcohol is going to impair motor coordination, and this often shows up in how a person moves. An employee who has difficulty maybe walking a straight line or stumbling frequently, or maybe they lose balance easily, those may be showing signs of alcohol impairment. Maybe you might notice clumsiness with objects, like maybe they're dropping tools or fumbling with their paperwork, or maybe they knock something over. Those might seem like small mistakes, but when they happen repeatedly, especially in safety sensitive environments, they're red flags. Coordination issues are particularly dangerous, especially when our employees are operating machinery, or maybe they're operating vehicles or handling hazardous materials. Imagine a mechanic dropping a wrench inside of an engine, or a driver who can't steady their hands on the wheel. The potential consequences are severe. And that's why supervisors are trained to look beyond the excuses like, oh, I'm just tired. When there are multiple coordination issues that are coming up, it's reasonable to suspect alcohol as a factor here. Alcohol misuse can show up in somebody's overall appearance. Sweating, maybe it's a flushed face without some sort of environmental cause like heat or exercise. It can be a physiological response to alcohol. And then over time, the chronic misuse is going to lead to noticeable weight gain or a noticeable weight loss, as well as declining attention to their grooming or their hygiene. These may not be the first signs that you notice, but they're often part of the bigger picture when they're combined with the behavior and the performance changes. So as a supervisor, you don't need to make health judgments about your employees. You just need to recognize when the changes in appearance are consistent with alcohol misuse and document them appropriately. One of the most common behavioral signs of alcohol misuse is mood swings. An employee who normally gets along well with coworkers may suddenly become irritable or aggressive or withdrawn. And these changes often don't match the situation. So, for example, here, an employee may overreact to small issues or become angry when they're corrected on something minor. And that's not typical with workplace stress. It's a disproportionate response that suggests something deeper is happening. Irritability and mood swings affect more than just the individual. They're going to impact the team dynamics. Coworkers might start avoiding the person. Conflicts might start coming up. And there might be an overall morale decline. So, as a supervisor, when noticing these changes is going to be an important step in really protecting not only the safety, but also the workplace culture. Another sign of alcohol misuse is sudden aggressiveness or maybe loud or disruptive behavior. So, an employee who normally speaks at a regular volume might begin talking loudly or shouting across the room, or maybe even using confrontational language that doesn't fit the situation. And this can create tension in the workplace. It's going to make coworkers uncomfortable, or maybe they even feel unsafe. Aggressive behavior escalates quickly, and especially when alcohol is lowering their inhibition and reducing their impulse control. So, supervisors should pay close attention to whether this type of behavior is out of character and whether it coincides with other physical or performance signs. So, documenting loud, aggressive conduct alongside the slurred speech or an odor of alcohol is going to build a clear case for reasonable suspicion. And alcohol is going to lower inhibitions, which causes employees to laugh at things that aren't funny, or maybe they make inappropriate comments at the wrong time. And while humor is normal in the workplace, laughter that seems misplaced or exaggerated or maybe even disruptive, it can be a warning sign when combined with the other indicators. Risk-taking behavior is also common. So an employee may ignore safety protocols or climb on the equipment without proper gear, or maybe they skip steps that they normally follow. And these actions not only endanger them, but also their coworkers. And the problem is that employees under the influence often believe that they're fine. Alcohol typically creates overconfidence, and that's going to make them less cautious and more willing to take risks. And this false sense of security makes the workplace more dangerous. As a supervisor, you don't need to know exactly how much they've had to drink. If their actions are reckless or inappropriate, and especially if they contradict company policies, it's enough to justify further action. And not all alcohol misuse shows up as loud or aggressive behavior. In fact, some employees go in the opposite direction, becoming unusually quiet or withdrawn or disengaged. Maybe you notice them avoiding eye contact or refusing to participate in group tasks or isolating themselves from coworkers. Drowsiness is another sign. If an employee appears unusually tired, maybe nodding off at their station or struggling to stay awake, alcohol might be a part of that reason. And, fatigue has a lot of causes, but you have to consider alcohol misuse if the signs are consistent and they're paired with other indicators. The key is to look for patterns. An isolated day of fatigue might not mean much, but repeated drowsiness combined with poor performance or other physical signs should be taken very seriously. Performance issues are often one of the most clear indicators that something is wrong. So, a once reliable employee may start making frequent mistakes or producing sloppy work or missing deadlines. And these changes don't always mean alcohol is the cause, but they should prompt you to look deeper. When work quality is declining suddenly and with no explanation, supervisors should begin observing carefully for other signs. Is the employee showing physical symptoms like red eyes or slurred speech? Are they displaying mood swings or withdrawal symptoms? It's going to be important to note that stress and illness and personal struggles can also cause performance changes. That's why your role is to gather as many observations as possible. You're not diagnosing the cause, you're documenting the facts. And if you can consistently see an employee's performance slipping alongside other alcohol-related signs, that is when the reasonable suspicion testing becomes necessary. Errors and accidents are red flags that supervisors must never ignore. An employee under the influence might drop tools or miscalculate measurements or miss critical safety checks, and these mistakes are costly and dangerous. Even more concerning are the near misses. These are situations where an accident almost happened. So, for example, a driver swerves at the last second, or a mechanic narrowly avoids injuring themselves. These moments are warnings that should never be brushed off. If you notice repeated accidents or near misses, document them carefully. When they're paired with other physical or behavioral signs, they're providing strong justification for reasonable suspicion testing. And attendance patterns can reveal a lot about alcohol misuse. Employees struggling with alcohol may show up late. They're going to call in sick more frequently. They're going to leave without any good reason. And over time, these patterns are going to start to stand out, especially when they don't match the employee's past behavior. Hangovers are a major factor here. So an employee who drank heavily the night before may be too ill to report in on time the next day, or maybe they may leave early to recover. And while one sick day might not raise suspicion, repeated issues are going to signal a deeper problem. And so supervisors have to track attendance carefully. We want to document specific times and dates. That's going to help to identify whether the issue is random or is it part of a pattern. And when attendance problems align with other physical or performance issues, they're going to create a reasonable suspicion case. Alone, they might not be enough, but combined, they're going to paint a really clear picture for us. And one of the most common situations that supervisors face is employees showing up impaired at the start of a shift. And this may be from drinking the night before or from early morning drinking before work. So the odor of alcohol at the start of a day is a very strong warning sign. Maybe the employee arrives late, or they look disheveled, or maybe they're having trouble getting started on tasks. Even if they argue that they're fine, your observations matter more. Impairment at the start of the day is just as dangerous as impairment during the shift. So supervisors must act quickly in these situations. If you see clear signs of impairment before an employee begins safety-sensitive work, you are obligated to remove them from duty and initiate testing. On-the-job drinking is less common, but it still happens. So employees may attempt to sneak alcohol in containers or drink during breaks or take long unexplained absences from their work areas. And supervisors must be alert to unusual patterns. So, for example, maybe an employee who takes frequent bathroom breaks, or they disappear for long periods because maybe they're using that time to drink. And discovery of containers or paraphernalia like bottles or flasks, that's another major red flag. In those cases, your responsibility is to document and act. Don't ignore the signs or assume somebody else is going to handle it. If alcohol is being used on the job, safety is already compromised. And the DOT regulations make it clear. Supervisors must intervene as soon as the on-the-job drinking is suspected. This isn't optional, it's a legal requirement. Even if employees don't drink at work, after-hours drinking can still impact their performance the next day. Hangovers cause fatigue, headaches, irritability, and difficulty concentrating. And these effects make it dangerous for employees to operate vehicles or machinery. Some employees may underestimate how long alcohol is going to stay in their system. And depending on how much they drank, they may still be impaired when they're reporting for duty the next morning. Their reaction time, judgment, and coordination all are still going to be affected, even if they don't feel intoxicated. So as a supervisor, you must take next day impairment very seriously. Hangovers are going to compromise safety in the same way that drinking on the job does. And DOT regulations are going to apply in both situations. So imagine that a driver reports with the odor of alcohol on his breath. He's got bloodshot eyes and has delayed responses to questions. And while he's insisting that he is fine, your observations are going to say otherwise. And this is just a textbook case of reasonable suspicion. You don't need proof that he drank or even to know how much he drank. Your documented observations are enough to justify testing. So the correct step here is to remove him from duty immediately and document what you saw and arrange for testing without delay. In another scenario, a mechanic returns from lunch. They're stumbling slightly, they're laughing too loudly, they're dropping tools repeatedly, and each behavior alone might not really mean much, but together they create a clear concern. And this situation shows why supervisors must look for patterns. Stumbling plus inappropriate humor plus the clumsiness is going to make a strong case for suspicion. Even if the employee denies drinking, your role is not to argue. Your role is to observe, document, and act. Removing the employee from duty and arranging testing protects not only the employee, but also their coworkers and the company. Maybe an office worker begins making frequent mistakes. Maybe they start snapping at coworkers and avoiding eye contact. And these signs might seem subtle, but taken together, they're going to raise valid concerns. Performance issues that are combined with behavioral red flags, these are strong grounds for suspicion. Even if the physical signs aren't obvious, the overall pattern points to potential impairment. And documenting these issues is going to allow you to take appropriate action and demonstrate that your decision was based on specific observable facts. So consider a situation where an employee drank heavily at a company holiday party, and then they reported for work the next day, and they were sluggish and irritable and forgetful. And even though the drinking happened off duty, the hangover effects are directly impacting workplace performance. This still qualifies as reasonable suspicion. So as a supervisor, you're going to be responsible for recognizing impairment regardless of when the drinking happened. If the employee is unfit for duty, then they have to be removed and they have to be tested. Documentation is the foundation of reasonable suspicion. It's going to transform your observations from just subjective impressions into objective facts. So always be specific. Instead of writing employee was drunk, write employee had slurred speech, smelled strongly of alcohol, and stumbled while walking at 8:30 a.m. in the yard. Always include the time, always include the place, and the context of your observations. Those details are going to matter in the audits and the investigations and any legal proceedings. We also want to avoid inserting personal opinions or assumptions. Don't write that someone looked hungover. Describe the actual signs, like bloodshot eyes and frequent yawning. That would be appropriate to write down. Accurate documentation not only is going to protect the company, it's protecting you as the supervisor by proving that your decision was based on facts and not bias. And when you suspect alcohol impairment, the first priority is removing the employment from safety-sensitive duties. And this has to be done immediately. Allowing an impaired worker to continue operating is going to put everyone at risk. The removal process should be professional, and it should also be discreet. You don't need to accuse the employee of being intoxicated. Just simply state that you observe specific behaviors, and for safety reasons, they cannot continue their duties until testing is complete. And this step may feel uncomfortable, but it is non-negotiable. DOT expects supervisors to act swiftly to protect the public's safety. And once you've removed the employee from duty, the next step is to arrange for an alcohol test. So DOT requires that the test be conducted within 2 hours of your observation. If circumstances prevent this, you document the reason. Testing can never be delayed more than 8 hours. So it's critical that testing is arranged promptly. The sooner that the test is administered, the stronger the evidence. Delays weaken the case, and it may be questioned in an audit. Always follow your company's specific procedures for testing. But keep in mind that timing is everything, and acting quickly is going to ensure compliance and protects everyone involved. Confidentiality is essential in reasonable suspicion cases, and you should only share information with those directly responsible, like HR or a designated management. Other employees, they don't need to know the details. Workplace gossip is going to undermine the trust, and it's going to damage the employee's reputation unfairly. So supervisors have to be role models in handling these cases with discretion and with professionalism. And documentation should always be stored securely. It should always be stored in line with the company policy and DOT regulations. And this is going to protect the employee. It's going to protect their privacy. And it's also going to ensure that the records are available for audits and investigations. So to recap here, supervisors must recognize alcohol misuse by observing physical or behavioral or performance signs. You don't need to diagnose or prove impairment. You just need to describe what you see, what you hear, or what you smell. Documentation is the most important part of the process. Be specific, be factual, be objective. These notes justify your actions and protect you in audits or legal cases. And once suspicion is established, act immediately. Remove the employee from duty and arrange timely testing. Also, maintain confidentiality at all times. And these steps keep the workplace safe and compliant. So before we move on, we're going to test your understanding with a little short knowledge check here. This isn't about tricking you. It's just about reinforcing the key points that you're using on the job. So think carefully about each question. So for example here, what is the DOT timeframe for testing? Can reasonable suspicion be based on a hunch? What details must always appear in documentation? These quick questions ensure that you're walking away with the essentials locked in. And once you feel confident, you're going to be able to move to the next module.